Please join me in welcoming Miss Sarita Brown. Thank you.
Thank you. Good morning. It's a pleasure to be here. I have to say that it's been a delight to get to know the Schaefers through the phone calls and then through the funny conversation about, so am I making this up? Do you guys have a movie with Brad Pitt? Is it the same thing? And all of that against the backdrop of the clear synergy that exists between not only this company, family-owned, growing, a role model for those of us who have a nonprofit in Washington, D.C. that's now 15 employees after 15 years, and you're 110 and growing, but it's also to be with all of you. Because what we have in common is exactly what Myra was talking about. We have in common the choices that we've made, and that is to place our energies, professional, personal energies, in education. And for all that is enhanced through technology, it's still a people business. And that people business is about common cause. It's about blending what an institution, what a program, what a professor, what an administrator offers with the students who are seeking it and whose future depends on the quality of the education that they receive. So when I received this invitation, I was thrilled, because to have people like yourselves dedicate serious time to a reflection on how you can do your job better, and ultimately then how you can serve in greater measure, I know I'm among mi gente. We're all together here. My purpose in terms of what I'm going to share about Excelencia in education is really to show you touch points between what I would think you do on a daily basis and what we do. But most importantly, I hope to do it well enough so that when we end this conversation, you bookmark our website and you think about the ways we can work together going forward. So in putting this together, I entitled it Serving Latino College Students, Who is Ready to Engage America's Future Talent Base. I chose that title because for 30 years, we've been talking about demographics. I would think that you have your own versions of it, whether it's by state or nationally. For those of you who read the Western Interstate Commission on Higher Education, they've been doing a report, Who's Knocking on the College Door, for over a decade. We've been looking at who comprises America's student body. And increasingly, the proportion of America's students are Latino. Right now, 0 to 3, 1 in 3 children are Latino. In terms of elementary and secondary schools, 1 in 4. And in terms of college going, 1 in 5. So these are significant numbers. And it really doesn't matter where in the country you are. This population is a growing proportion of the American society. Equally important is the heritage of the Latino community in this country, which is hardworking, very eager to participate, very ready to build things and make things work. And a community that, while still not as highly educated as other communities, a community that is clearly recognizing that to succeed, to contribute, to play the role that many Latinos want to play in their families, which is to be a supportive family member, and to propel the community, requires the capacity to earn an income. And that income really is connected to a college education. All of those things are elements that we have as we begin this conversation. For the work that we do at Excelencia in Education, I'm going to give you just a little bit of background about me and about how the organization got started, because I think it's relevant for the kinds of things you do. I started my career at the University of Texas at Austin. I was a student there and was a student activist. I looked around the campus of a place as big as UT in the great state of Texas, and I was struck at the absence of Mexican American and Black students. I didn't believe that that was something that just happened. I believed that if we retraced the steps of who got admitted and who got recruited and who got financial aid, and if we picked at all of that, we would see discretionary points in the process where things didn't happen or things could have happened. I had that view because of a family upbringing with a father who had a third-grade education and a mother who had a high school diploma, and both of them were committed. Mijita was going to go to college, so when we moved to San Antonio, Texas, they picked a school district. That wasn't how it went. They asked the real estate agent when they bought their first home, where in this town do the kids go to college? And so the real estate agent said, you want to live here. And that was how my parents got me to college. They put me in an environment where I would be with kids, I would be with families, I would be in a school where the assumption was I was going to go to college. That's who I relied on. I imagined when I looked around at UT that had that been a point of intervention for a lot more students that either I left in San Antonio or I knew throughout the state, there would be a lot more students at UT. That was something I had instinctively. I also am opinionated, and I didn't hesitate about giving my opinions. And so it put me in a place where I was able to speak with the graduate dean, who literally asked me why he couldn't find Mexican American and black students. I told him what I thought, and to his credit, he offered me a job. That job was a very beginning, but from that first job, we built the Minority Affairs Division within the University of Texas at Austin that by 1993 put UT Austin #1 in graduating Latinos with PhDs, top 20 in graduating African American PhDs. I tell you that because it was done at a place as big as UT, with the complexity of everything you can imagine, 85 departments, 9 different programs, the vestiges of desegregation that were still very alive and well when we were trying to recruit, issues of financial aid, but we did it. We did it. It can be done. So coming to Washington, D.C. for what I thought was going to be a 2-year stay, and in 1997 finding myself in this amazing opportunity, which was to lead a White House initiative on educational excellence for Hispanic Americans, I found myself with the same mindset. It's a landscape. Okay, the landscape is bigger, 24 federal agencies. The scope is larger. It's early childhood all the way through lifelong learning, but it's still the same. I mean, it's still a matter of saying, how does our federal government serve Hispanics, not only in terms of education, but in terms of workforce? And for 3 years, along with the person I met while doing this job, Deborah Santiago, who I was smart enough to become our deputy, we took that on. And in the same way that we did at UT Austin with people making common cause, we looked at the system and we figured out what were some things that were discretionary that could be re-examined and the flow would change. And I can talk to you about that for anyone who is interested. But the point of both of these stories is that I have under my belt, with all the arrogance that I'm going to bring to this, I have under my belt evidence it can be done. I'm not asking anybody to do something we don't know how to do. We do know how to do this. The fundamental question is, are we going to do it? Are you going to do it? Is it going to happen on this watch? And the reason I'm cranking this up right now is because for 30 years I've believed that. And when in the year 2000, the census data was released, and I was reading US News, and I was reading the New York Times and the Washington Post, and everybody was acting like, did you know Latinos are everywhere? Did you know they're young? Did you know? And I'm going, if that's the way really expert people are comfortable talking, then they clearly do not have any expectation that they're going to use that information to do their job. That's how I saw what that whole dynamic was about. The more ominous way of looking at it is that people have been repeating stories of equity gaps for years and somehow acting as if it's somebody else's job to do. All right, I get it. If you, whoever you are in your job, doesn't think that who comes to the college or university is your job, I guess then you just keep doing your job and leave it to someone else to address. Deborah and I felt in that experience that we had to make it clear it is our job. and it is our opportunity. The most exciting thing about this conversation is that it's not about persuading people to do something they don't want to do. It's about figuring out how to reach communities that want to participate. And that is the framing of the conversation at Excelencia in Education. We launched as a nonprofit organization looking at data. And we did it with the essential idea that data fundamentally is how you ground an argument, how you look at the issues, but data is not simply a static thing. Data is an investment in your understanding of how you can change conditions, not simply measure them. That's an undergirding of our views, and it is how we approach this conversation with you. Because using the wonderful programs that I've learned about that are being offered at Ad Astra, you have the opportunity for insight. And that fundamentally is what this discussion is about. How can you have insight about the function and the offerings and the learning environment that your colleges and universities offer all students? And then the ultimate decision is, what do you do to change it? In our case, we use data all over the place in everything we do. A lot of it is to inform policy. And when we talk about policy, we're not talking about legislation. We're talking about large-scale recommendations for how a college or university functions, a system functions, a state functions. And yes, we make recommendations to congressional offices. But it's really about how do our systems serve all Americans, and we will assert the view that because we are at the table with many others, we are able to say, when we have to start the conversation, we're applying a Latino lens. Why? Because equity is a design studio conversation. If you have a wonderful innovation and you don't know who it serves, and you're saying it's going to serve all, check your data. It might serve all, but you don't know it serves all unless you look at whatever it is, whether it's a course offering, whether it's a particular kind of advising, whatever it may be. Look, learning communities are wonderful things, but learning communities in many colleges and universities have not included students of color. And it's not because a learning community is a bad thing, it's because how the students find the way to participate. You can think of your own examples. Programs that are highly effective for all, when that statement is said, just know you cross paths with anyone from Excelencia, will smile sweetly and say, great, show us your data. And as long as your data shows that it is effective with Latino students, you have our attention. If you don't know, we'll ask you to come back. Because that kind of thinking is how together we address equity gaps from the very beginning. So in terms of all that we do, since some of you have not heard of Excelencia, don't know us, just know that on our website, I'm going to use the jargon, we are open sourced, meaning we produced our publications, our analysis with resources from people like the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, the Lumina Foundation, ECMC Foundation. The point being, we secure foundation support to provide this analysis. For you, it's just pour yourself a cup of coffee, a cup of tea, sit there and go through the website, and you'll be able to look at analysis over the last 15 years on topics that most people have to tackle. Something that for us was particularly strong as a dynamic in the last 5 years was this whole discussion about undermatching. Undermatching is a term that people use. The Obama administration used it a lot. It's fine to say that there are students in America who have grades and demonstrated capacities, which suggests that they could be going to different institutions than the ones they go to. Okay, I don't have a problem with that. But those conversations usually implied that if the student wasn't going to whatever the alternative institution was, that it somehow was on the students. And when you really got underneath it, it really was that those students just were making poor choices. Well, as we get to know each other, understand that from my perspective, if I have to look at the behavior of a college or university or a student, I know who has the resources, and I know who has the knowledge. So I'm surely not going to blame a student for not knowing that whatever this other alternative place is would have been the better choice. My view is that better choice had better do a better job recruiting. I mean, if that's the idea, if what we're saying is that there are colleges and universities, for instance, your college and university, that should be the first choice of high-achieving students who are first-generation college goers, low income, and have never been to your state, don't know your area, that's for you. That's your opportunity. Now, I'm never going to say that students shouldn't work hard and that we all cannot increase information, but in this dynamic, the opportunities for colleges and universities to look internally at what they do and then externally at the great opportunities that exist, that's where we want to come to you with opportunities to discuss. So in terms of what we bring today, more than anything else, Latino student success in higher education is our mission. We do it based on human capital, and we say that as a fundamental issue for anyone who is in this enterprise. You are looking for students. As we've done our work, we've tackled all kinds of issues. One of the issues that the Gates Foundation is pretty serious about is this whole question of financial aid and how to consider the delivery system for financial aid. Lots of students who don't even understand financial aid don't pursue college because when they're looking at their whole family income being as much or less than what is in your college catalog saying the cost for 1 year is, they take themselves out of this discussion. We have to demystify it. We have to be plain spoken. There are many elements about financial aid that you can explore on our website and we can discuss. But in our work tackling financial aid, we did a deep dive to look at who today's students are. This particular chart is something we are using all over the country, and I think it bears spending a few minutes with. So on your left, you see a profile of traditional students. And traditional students are students who graduate from high school college ready. They enroll in college or university full-time. They enroll right after high school. They live on campus. They complete a degree in 4 years. Their parents went to college. They are white, non-Hispanic, and they do not work while enrolled. And ultimately, when they choose their colleges or universities, they do it based on prestige and course offerings. That profile is what most policymakers, a lot of people still think of as the traditional profile, today's students. And when you look at what your college and university offers, more than likely it is mentally, it is designed, it is projecting, that's going to be your student body. What we found when we looked at the data, which we call post-traditional, is that many of the students who were graduating from high school needed remediation, that they enrolled in community colleges and they did it part-time with an idea of getting a baccalaureate degree, that they delayed their enrollment doing other things, being in the workforce, taking care of family issues, that they live off campus, usually at home, and they do it to take care of family members, whether it's their children or their parents or siblings, that they take more than the 4 years, sometimes as long as 10, that they are predominantly Latino and African American, that they work as much as 30 hours or more, and those are not these wonderful opportunities to do internships or travel abroad. It's usually at low-income jobs, and that they make choices about where they're going to go to school on very practical reasons. Where can they go to school while working? How can they get to school? Issues of what they can afford. Any guess in terms of the proportion of traditional and post-traditional students today? Any guess how many traditional students, or I'll do it the other way, What is the proportion of America's students that are post-traditional? Any guess? 75%. 75% of today's students are that profile. And that, I think, alone calls into question the practices that we are most familiar with. Now, I'm an old recruiter, and I'm the mother of, just today, a 17-year-old. And I very much believe in the benefits of going to school in the traditional way. There is so much to be gained by being on a residential campus and going to school full-time and not being distracted by all the things that post-traditional students navigate. If I can bestow that on all the students that I meet, I will. But I recognize that I can't do that. I can't. Sometimes I struggle to do it from my own. So the social contract that all of us have to do a gut check around is, what are we in our jobs within higher education? What are our institutions prepared to do? Because 75% of our future, to use the jargon, client base come to this proposition of getting a degree with those needs and those dynamics. Now, we can try to search for the 25%, and that 25% is shrinking every day. So we can continue to search for them. But the majority of the students that are going to seek admission to higher education are going to come to us with those characteristics. And it's not because they're being ornery, or it's not because they're blowing off our advice. It's because their lives require this. That the systems that we've created in this country at this point marry to their needs in a way that they have to find other answers. What I'm delighted to report to you is that there are colleges and universities in this country that when we ask that question, what is your institution doing to accelerate success for all, can answer that question. They can do it because they disaggregate data, because they know exactly who is doing well and who is still having challenges, and they are calculating in their budgetary plans, in their plans for growth, this social contract. There are colleges and universities that say to students when they admit them, if we admit you, it's because we believe you can thrive here. And if you stumble, it's on us to help you figure it out. Now, I told you UT Austin. UT Austin then, and with all due respect to President Fenves and my wonderful colleagues there, it still is. Look to your left, look to your right, only one of you will be here. I mean, that old adage. There are many colleges and universities of the most renown that still function like that. And we know how to deliver education in that format. We know how to be highly selective. We know how to create very competitive environments. And we know how to anoint those who, whether it's the Hunger Games survival, we know how to say, you have made it. That we know. And I'm saying it in stark terms. We can tone it down a little. But we know that. We know how to do that. What all of us are living through is this process of figuring out how malleable are the systems? How malleable is the delivery approach? How much can we bend the things that we've always done to adjust and still deliver a quality educational experience and have graduates who are ready to take on their career paths, their civic engagement, all of that? That's what today, this conference, your work, our work together is all about. We are living through a time when it is clear that higher education systems and norms have got to adapt. The question will be how fast and where. And those that are ready to adapt in ways that look at the role of how an institution within its current structure can deliver quality education are the institutions we're most interested in. One of the things that has given us a lot of ánimo, even from the very beginning, is that in our very early years, we believed that within colleges and universities, there were people and there were efforts that were making a difference. And that even though we hadn't met, if we talked to them, we would see there would be resonance. The way that we've, quote, proven that is this initiative, Examples of Excelencia. Since 2006, we put out a call for nominations every January, literally. Anybody can nominate. Anybody can nominate. And what we're asking people to nominate, so it's an early request to you for January 2020, think about programs within your institutions, within your community, that you think are having a marked difference or making a marked difference in the lives of Latino students. I am not asking you to name the Cesar Chavez, ethnic studies. It can be that. It doesn't have to be. It can be the chemistry department at your institution because the director of the freshman chemistry program has paid attention. Who's in my class? And when the person has seen, I don't have many Latino students, and that's not going to work. We got to figure this out. And they've been able to figure out. So what do they do during freshman orientation to make chemistry very clear that it's welcoming of all? There are all kinds of tactics that go into it, but fundamentally, Examples of Excelencia, through this national call for nominations, review of the data by our staff, an external committee that actually selects, since 2006, associate, baccalaureate, and graduate, and then 4 years ago we added community-based organizations. These are programs that are recognized. They are recognized by Excelencia at an event in Washington, D.C., a very modest $5,000 award that we give them. But more important, the people who run them agree to be part of a searchable database. And you can get online right now and see over 300 programs. And you can look at the person who directs them, you can see their email, and you can contact them. We did this at the beginning partially to say it can be done, partially to build tactical information, but mostly it was to start to build this community of common cause. That has continued and will as far as Excelencia's work is going. But what we found is that once a year program-based activity, while good, wasn't enough. So again, the organization started with two people, Deborah Santiago and myself, and this idea that we needed to check folks being complacent about equity gaps, and we needed to keep saying, this can be tackled. We can conquer this, and there's a lot of information out there. What we then did was create an action network. That action network is designed for exactly the kind of conversation that you're having and that I hope you have all the time. How do you talk about issues, not just your successes, but also your challenges? How do you compare notes with colleagues to say, what did you do that actually got that result? How would you adjust it? So Excelencia in Action is a network which began with programs and now includes over 100 presidents and chancellors across this country. They are leaders of institutions that are saying publicly, I want my campus to be known as a learning environment where Latino students thrive. Last night I had a chance to join some of the fine folks who were attending this conference, and there was a lady there from the University of Central Florida, and she was talking about her job, and I didn't reach over the table and say, President Seymour is a president for Latino student success. The lady who was sitting right across from me, who was from Texas A&M Corpus Christi, I was able to say, President Quintanilla is a president for Latino student success. The truth of the matter is that all of us are in enterprises so big that if we're in one part of the organization or campus, we're not necessarily going to know the others. So this is about networking. This is about the feedback loop. This is about letting you know that even while you may be looking at the registrar's operation or admissions or what will be done in terms of class schedules or the bursar's office, that you very well could be in an institution whose president has said publicly that I want, on my watch, for my institution, for our institution, to become a place that when people think about where in this country should I go, particularly if I know nothing about higher education, that I know I'm going to go there because that president has already said, we want you. Not only do we want you, but our social contract is you gain admission and we will do what we know how to do to help you cross the stage, get a degree, and succeed in life. The element of the last 15 years that has been a pretty significant dynamic when we start to talk with professionals who know about the change strategy for Latino students is this term Hispanic serving institutions. Can I see a show of hands? How many of you know about HSIs? Okay. HSIs is a construct. It is something that was created, and it happened, this is whimsy, it happened that the legislation that actually enabled Title V, which is a portion of the Higher Education Act in 1998, that authorized funding for institutions that became known as Hispanic serving institutions. There's a lot that can be said about the legislation, about the trajectory, about the comparison of HSIs with historically black colleges and universities, with tribal colleges, that we would welcome for anyone who wanted to pursue it. And quite literally, Deborah Santiago is the national expert on this discussion because she, even before the legislation, tracked the evolution of legislation all the way through. And I, in a practitioner line, was at UT Austin when the Hispanic Association of Colleges and Universities was forming. And as a recruiter, I could see the merit of having a relationship between a feeder pattern, between an institution that graduated a large number of Latino undergraduates to a graduate institution like UT Austin. All of that is in this discussion. The part I want to say just straight up is that being eligible to compete for a Title V grant, which is still the process to become an HSI, is important. And it's a good, perhaps watershed moment in terms of the proportion of the students that you enroll. Serving is something a whole lot bigger. And that is something we've been saying from our start, and we've said it enough and had enough response that now we're calling the question. What does that mean? In 2018, with support from the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, we announced the launch of the Seal of Excelencia as a certification system for institutions that were ready to be reviewed in terms of their capacity to serve Latinos. This is an outline of what we believe any institution, whether they want to participate in the certification system or they simply want to look internally and ask. They use data, and that means who is admitted, who is retained, who gets financial aid, how long does it take to get a degree, what happens once they graduate. That you look at practices, you look at what the institution offers, and you have the capacity, a capacity vastly enhanced with the kinds of tools that Ad Astra offers, to really see what's the impact. But the use of data isn't just a computer program or an afternoon meeting. It's the dispersal of that data throughout the institution. It's a sense of accountability by everyone who touches students. It's the capacity for everyone to understand a report, particularly those who are somehow contributing to the outcomes. It's having an internal capacity within an institution to distribute this information and to talk about it. I mean, classic dynamics over the years. I'll be in a president's office and, they'll be waving a report, the 12th class day report, or they'll give me the data. And I'll say, that's wonderful. And I said, so do you have discussions with the Dean's Council? That's a great idea. Well, do you talk with the chair? I like that. Or do you, does your student success center go department to department, and I like that. I mean, again, I'm fundamentally a practitioner, so for me it's like, okay, I'm glad I made that suggestion. I'll come back to you next year. Let's see how it works. It's data that everyone who is delivering the education has to have some connection with, because all of us, it's a human enterprise, all of us contribute to the learning experience for students. So the use of practices means those things that are perhaps intimate but highly impactful have to be considered, because if what you're doing large scale is not yielding the results that you want, you're going to have to look for ideas. And if you have something that's working in small scale, how could it grow? How could it become a pervasive strategy for all? And then the final one is in terms of show of leadership. This is a component that is at the corner of every obstacle and every opportunity. Leadership means that the things that are needed get support. It means that not only does a person looking at the data have the capacity to make the case so that the budget that's necessary to make the change is granted, but that there's also the humility about the mission to recognize that things as they've always been done that are not yielding the results that the community needs, that the students need, that the institution needs, must also be suspended. And it is scary to do that, particularly if you don't have their replacement. So it is a leadership proposition. We are living through the most seismic changes affecting higher education that we've ever experienced. That is the watch that we're together on. And understanding the parameters of what we're able to do independently is a beginning. What are you in a position to do right now by yourself? And then, who do you work with within the campus? And then who do you work with externally? And then how do you keep building the concentric circles to actually be able to display the leadership that I think higher education has always been about? I mean, I choose to work in higher education because when the question is asked of me, what will mitigate in an equitable pathway in this country? I always come back to education. I believe in it. I've seen what it does. We were having a conversation with Chetty and others who were saying, is really a higher education a divider, or does it enable things? I'm an optimist. I bet on higher education. Even those who graduate and have a first job that isn't quite what their parents would want them to have, I still believe that what we do as an enterprise in terms of this social contract with a student who bets on the capacity of our colleges and universities to support their aspirations, who do what is asked of them in terms of their faculty. They perform in units known as classes. They fulfill degree requirements that are crafted against a really thoughtful review of the future that these students are going to live in. Not just what it is that faculty are comfortable teaching, with all due respect, but what the students need and who will employ them. I'm not interested in promoting a vocational approach to higher education. This is opinion now, I do believe in the quality of a liberal arts education. I think that having a time in our lives when we're exposed to ideas bigger than ourselves sustain us as people as we then enter positions of adulthood in our society. And now, more than ever, as a country, we have to know our history. We have to know the facts. And again, as a sector in society, higher education is what I'll bet on. It's what we have always been committed to. And that ability to preserve the best of an educational experience for students while transforming delivery systems and figuring out how to do it in very user-friendly ways with a generation of students whose currency is completely different. I'll never text as fast as my daughter does with her thumbs. I mean, I'll never do that. And I still, even when I text, I punctuate. I'm not going to change. But I want to do that. And I think all of us want to do that. And all of these tactics, all of these elements, complicated that they are, can be distracting, or they can be energizing, as together we blend them into this mode of change. So what I've said is, these are the things in terms of reframing serving. And this is in essence a framework anybody can use. But at Excelencia, we have actually taken it to the next step. And that is that we have this certification system. The beta year was this year, so we announced it in October of 2018. Deborah liked to say we were jumping off a cliff. I didn't like the idea of, the movie where, the two women driving the car. Nah, I didn't like that one. But we did it. It happened. We had 100 institutions that were participating who got the application. We had 30 who received it. 10 of those 30 looked at it and said, we're going to do this, but not this year. We'll get back to you. The others that filled out the application, we had 20 that were finalists. You can see this information on our website. And from that list of finalists, 20. The cohort from the group of finalists of 20, 9 were comprising the cohort of the first institutions in this country to receive the Seal of Excelencia. As we've been comparing notes, some of them are people who are part of this community. I'm going to be coy, so I make you look on the website to see which 9. But they are community colleges, they are baccalaureate granting institutions. They completed a 16-page application. And what's most impressive to us as we launch this effort are the numbers of institutions in the finalist list who then participated in the debrief and in the institutes we've held subsequently. And among even the 9 who have participated in institutes about faculty hiring, about alignment, about the use of data since. This is not about, I got my gold star, I punched my card, I'm done, I just stick it on a website and everybody's going to come. It is about continuous improvement, but it's also about transparency. So anybody who is interested in this in any way, know that we have colleagues who are part of this effort, who participated and who are very willing to share their applications. They are gutsy enough to say, we can talk about how we answered those questions, what we've done, even though we didn't get the seal. Secretary Richard Riley is one of our advisors. Secretary Henry Cisneros is another one of our advisors. We've had over the years really mighty people who have done a lot of things. Both Secretary Riley and Secretary Cisneros are very clear about the ethos of what we're doing. This is not about creating winners and losers. This is about common cause. This is about driving towards the center and linking arms and doing the hard work to be able to make the changes while delivering, because we never shut down. It's not like okay, we're going to take a year for strategic planning and you don't have any, no, you have to do it all. But we do it together. And we do it with clear evidence that this ability to talk honestly about impact is going to be the method that allows us to find the solutions. You can count on Excelencia in Education to maintain everything that I've been talking about. You can look at our website and discover more, in more detail, about both the topics and the strategies. I hope it's conspicuous that there's lots of on-ramps. Whatever role you play at the institution, whatever your interests are, there are ways for us to work together. Since this is our 15th year, we are intentionally looking at the impact that we've had. And I put this slide up because it's a theme, it's a headline that we launched in 2010 that we're going to be asserting even more powerfully 2020 going forward. In 2010, when many people were taking on the college completion topic, I'll put it that way. So you had an administration, the Obama administration, saying America was going to be first in the world to have citizens with college degrees. You had the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation had a version of it. You had the Lumina Foundation that said by 2025, 60% of Americans would have some college. And at Excelencia, we were able, very quietly, stand in the middle of the room and say factually, yes. And the only way that's going to happen is a tactical plan for Latino college completion. I started by telling you we've been talking about demographics a long time, and we're still doing that. If our institutions are effective in serving all other students and not Latino students, our country will not have the human capital necessary. I don't believe that people are sitting there and avoiding serving Latinos. But what I am clear about is that the need to learn more about the Latino community, the capacity to apply tactics and strategies that comparable institutions to yours have used with good effect is there. And the need to do it was yesterday. It's now. Your service as an academic institution will be enriched by the degree to which you start amassing success with this population, not at the expense of anyone else, but adding to all that you do. This particular layout of this number and statistics is the kind of argument we're going to be making nationally. Our form of advocacy is to drive positive attention to people, programs, places that produce positive results. We are going to be very forceful about asserting the colleges and universities in this country that hold themselves accountable for serving all students. In doing that, they know how they serve Latino students, and thereby they know how they serve everyone else. And that they have measurable data about impact with this population. 6.1 million more degrees must be awarded to Latino students for us to reach these national goals. We are going to make it clear that every institution that actively and intentionally contributes to that is on the nation's Gold Star list. That's what we're going to do. We want to work with all of you in doing that. We will do it in a way that says the actualization of serving all is fundamentally what this conversation's about. And in doing that, this is what we're going to be using as our ethos. Serving Latino students is not at the expense of anyone else, but it is part of what you say about your role in society, as an individual, as a campus, as a system. Engaging the network, while this was referencing the network that Excelencia itself creates, the network for us has always been about common cause. And I know that by coming here today and spending time here with Ad Astra and with all of you, that we are now in a position to work together going forward. And we are serious about mobilizing the field. not with doomsday, but with bright future. Our capacity to do what higher education has as its highest goal is available. With the kinds of tools, the kinds of strategy, and the commitment to outcomes that we are engaged in, all of that is what we have the opportunity to do together. I was delighted to accept this invitation because I saw when I came last and met Myra and spoke to the Hispanic Development Fund, a community-based organization emblematic of the kinds of efforts that exist all over this country. Myra, as a spokesperson, made clear the longevity, the tenacity that you build from where you are, and it grows and grows and grows, and the insight to say it's not just about scholarships. It's about a whole spectrum of ways to work together. The fact that it is in the DNA of Ad Astra to look at technology and use it, to look at data and use it, and the fact that these fine folks invited me with our mission to come and speak to all of you, that's the common cause. It's a pleasure to be with you. Muchísimas gracias.